Thank you. As you can hear, I'm a bit of a chameleon. I've done many things within the fashion industry, but today I'm going to talk about inspiring a fashion team. I brought a friend with me on stage. He's called the Half-Made. Half-Made. A little bit of tailoring meets a finished garment, but we'll get to him later. A fashion company, or maybe I need to start the screen. Okay, here we go. If you think of a fashion company as one big arrow, a huge arrow, that contains lots of little arrows. You've got their design, production, sales, marketing, finance, and the brand. The big arrow is the brand and contains the company's culture and core values and strategic direction. My role as a fashion consultant or senior leader and part of the big team, the team which is big, the big arrow, is to align everyone with the strategic and cultural direction of the brand. In other words, to ensure that all the small arrows are pointing in the same direction. This is not always the case, as you probably know. The little arrows usually point in different directions and neglect the larger mission. Conflict usually arises when departments have conflicting goals and visions. One of the best ways a leader can teach, motivate, empower other leaders is just to listen. Listen to what they say. Listen to what they're doing. Leaders must know how to motivate everyone in the team in different ways and at different times. Leadership is comprised of communication, humility, and empathy. Now, let me briefly take you through the roles and aims and success criteria within the various departments. We start off with design. This is one thing I've never been. I've never been a designer, but I think the one thing about designers is that I kind of understand them, I kind of get them. The aim, normally, of a designer is to create. In the business, it's typically seen as an artistic process that cannot be managed. You cannot manage, they say, a designer. Normally, designers are free spirits. We heard a little bit from Walter before. Oh, what happened here? Okay. Hello. Okay, is it me? Okay, something happened there. Okay, back again. It's creative, they're visual, they want to make new products the whole time, they have a vision and mission, and the aim is to be first to market. Commercial. I heard Eugene and Walter talk about commercialism. It's not always the first thing on a designer's mind. A designer doesn't think, number one, I've got to make a product which is commercial. What us, as senior leaders, as consultants, what we've got to do is understand that you give these guys a free, open canvas and allow them to create. See? For us, we have just got to make sure that that DNA is passed through the company, that everybody understands that the designer is the head. In football terms, the designer is the goal scorer. Basically, they're going to score the goals. However, good design is of no use unless it can be marketed, and the ease of manufacture is easy to see. This is about the commercialism. See how to make the commercial values, how to understand. But that's up to us to inspire that. Fashion is a profession where one can easily get reactions from people with your work. If we move on to production, so bring my friend in, the Half-Made. This is a finished garment, as you can see here. This is from a brand I used to work with called Aquascutum. This is what comes within the garment. Now, many of you may know or understand production. Many of you may not. But if you can see the things which are important, the sourcing of fabrics. Where do you get your fabrics from? Who deals with the factories? The communication with the designer, making sure that the samples are correct, the first samples are correct. I've got here the success criteria is cheaper goods, faster to market. I'm not sure that's always the case when it comes to production, but it's something which faster to market is essential that you get products which are delivered correct and on time. The production department's always working with the design team, the sales team, the marketing, and the finance. It's a connector. We move on to the sales. Normally, we say, as a salesperson, you want to sell as much as possible. That's your aim, to sell as much as possible. Again, we're going back to this commercial world. It's not always the case when you're talking about couture. When we sell as much as possible, when I've got that cap on and I'm a salesman, it's about selling to the right shops. Who are the right shops? That's the question. The good salespeople are spending their time finding out who the right shops are, who are the right clients, depending on the brand. They're making the budgets, they're forecasting, they're looking at the key performance indicators. They're continuously finding feedback, getting feedback back from the market, which they can feed through to the designer, which hopefully will make that blank canvas look a little bit more like they want it to look like. What's the success criteria for a salesperson? It's to sell more. It's to sell and be above budget. When as a senior leader you speak to the salesperson, it's a different way to motivate these people. That they are, or we are, because we're all salespeople, we are influenced by more and more and more. We're influenced by having the right shops, by getting the buzz, by feeling really good about ourselves. We've finally got that shop we've been trying to get for X, Y, Z years. Nowadays, you have e-commerce. Again, that was touched on over there. But I've got one of the statistics I've got here. The e-commerce was worth over $1 trillion in 2012. I don't know how many zeros are in a trillion, but maybe you do. Mobile e-commerce. This is a new thing which is coming on. And it's estimated that over $25 billion will be sold via mobile phones and tablets, or over mobile phones and tablets. See? It's a huge amount of money. The marketing department, another interesting department. Communication. These guys it's so important for them to be able to take what the designer has given them in regards of the DNA of the brand and then communicate it to externally and internally. So we're talking about B2B, B2C, that's business to business and business to consumer, and also internally. The PR, the visual merchandising, the labeling, positioning of the brand in the market. I always see myself, when I'm in that role, or when I've been in that role in the marketing position, as being a part journalist, a part marketeer, and a part anthropologist. It's a huge mixture. But the thing is that nowadays you have to understand how everything works with modern communication networks and on the specific devices. When you're making marketing plans, it's essential to sync them up with the marketing strategies. What's the success criteria of the marketing department? In my opinion, it's keeping the brand in the consumer's eyes, because I believe that the most important thing is the consumer. That's the way I speak to my marketing department. It's essential that when you go to the shop, that you think of our brand and our products. I watched recently Borat. I don't know if any of you have ever seen Borat, Sacha Cohen. There's a fantastic case of Borat when he goes into a supermarket in the USA and he's looking at butter and he sees a whole, well, bigger, like 40 meters, and he says, "What is this? Butter. What is this? Butter. What is this? Butter. What is this? Butter." And he goes on and on and on about butter. It's a bit like the fashion industry at present. What is this? Clothes. What is this? Clothes. How are we going to get our clothes to be in the top of the mind, in people's heads? How do we remove the barriers of collaboration and let people create and communicate simple things? Peer-to-peer messaging. The way that I motivate a marketing team is to understand that word of mouth, the old-fashioned means of communication, is the best form. Nowadays, people are very, very happy to tell you bad news. The good news is rarely passed on. But if you have a good brand, a good product, a nice story, it's spread. We talked again earlier about, or not myself, Eugene and Walter, talked about social media and communication. Viral communication for good products or good things go really, really, really fast. The last of the small arrows, or the smallest arrows, was the finance department. They see things in a little bit more economic, a little bit more value, economic value. So the main aim there is to maximize revenues. Now that doesn't always hold well with the designer, because they just want to create designers. The finance guys just want to make money. Again, it's a generalization, but to keep it simple, that's all they want to do. Now, to maximize revenue, you can do that in many ways. I've seen a trend which is moving more and more towards ex-bankers, finance people, money people, investors is the words that these guys used before, coming into companies and trying to decide how to run a fashion company. It doesn't work. It must go the other way around. In my opinion, it must be design-led. See? You can have a CFO to take care of the accounts, the budgets, to reduce the fixed expenditures, to assign value to everything. But the fashion must be led by designers, must be led by the creative people, in my opinion. The success criteria of the finance department is profit. They measure everything in numbers. I'll quickly stop here and talk about, when you speak to a finance, or CFOs, they call Chief Financial Officer, they normally talk in numbers. A designer is talking in images, obviously. A marketing person or a salesperson is talking a little bit in images and a little bit in numbers. Obviously. The production is, again, a little bit of both, but the finance is speaking a different language, normally, to that of designers. The brand. In my opinion, the best recipe for a good, motivated fashion team is that everyone is focused around the common goals and values of the brand. In other words, the brand has to be more important than any individual. Again, Walter and Eugene spoke a little bit about the fact that many brands have been losing their chief designers. We could talk about Magella, which you all know about, that he left the company and the brand kept going. I believe that's okay, personally. Marc Jacobs recently left Louis Vuitton. The brand will keep going. This week we heard about Angela Arendt, who is not a designer, but she's at Burberry, and she's been a key player at Burberry for many, many years, along with Christopher Bailey. She's leaving, she's going to Apple, but the brand must continue. That's my opinion. I mean, of course, the guys had a different opinion, but that's my opinion. The brand must go on. It's essential that if you've created and you have a story and you have the DNA of something which is available to everybody, why should it stop because the designer goes? The brand is the most important, in my opinion. On the overview, I've got assumptions. So I've assumed that the fashion company is a brand, and I always will. And my second assumption is that the fashion company is design-led. It's always the designer, again, which is leading it. Can't go back, sorry. The overall roles, I should go back. I've already briefly explained about the roles and job descriptions, the performance targets, which need to be set for the team. A bonus which must be paid to our friends in the sales and marketing if we achieve the targets. Common bonuses is the best way to motivate the team if everybody understands that they will be rewarded if we meet the goals, which we'll come to next. Structure and hierarchy. Open communication. Everybody's allowed to bring something to the table. In companies that I go into, and I'm trying to align everything around the brand values, the receptionist, if she has a point, she's allowed to speak and tell and say and give her opinion. The juniors, the interns, everybody has an opinion and everybody's allowed to be heard and should be heard. When we talk about structure and hierarchy, I have one of my favorite books is Alice in Wonderland. There's a fantastic scene, or see if you look at the film or if you read the book, where Alice comes to a junction in the road, a fork, like this, and she says to the Cheshire Cat, "Which way should I go?" And he says to her, "Where do you want to go?" And Alice says, "I don't know." And the cat says, "Then it doesn't matter. It's essential that you have goals." I have an acronym called SMART. S for specific, M for measurable, A for achievable, R for realistic, and T for time frame. SMART goals. It's essential that you have goals. We should be on another screen, so that's next, sorry. Systems and processes. That's next. Who sets the budgets? Normally the finance department. If you're in the sales, then you try to speak to the finance guys and say to them, can we have this budget? Can we meet it? How often do you tweak it? How often do you change it? Is everything set around the shows? Is everything set around the sales seasons? Is everything set around the deadlines? Spending approval. Who decides how much you can spend? When we talk about strategy, we speak about what type. Growth. Should we grow? Should we reduce costs? Shared values. Are we proactive or are we reactive? Companies are different if they're owned by major shareholders which are public, like on the stock exchange, or if they're private with people's own money. There's a different value placed upon how we should get profit or how should we make money. It's essential if you're on the stock exchange to make profit every year, otherwise the share value will drop. I'm going really fast now, sorry. To sum up, to build a great brand today, as you've probably read, you need to build great brand experiences, and the best way to do that is to build a community around shared values with products and content that will hold our attention. Have weekly meetings. Have open communication. Remember, the brand is most important. Do not play the blame game. You all know, you did this, you said that. Don't play that game. Discuss, debate, and decide. Measure, learn, and improve. Work hard, play hard. And the final screen was this. Everybody, I think, will know these brands. How many of you know what these plants are? I'll tell you afterwards. Think about the environment. That's me. Thank you very much.